Hello and welcome to the TechBytes audiocast. My name's Tim and I'm from the TechBytes blogazine, and with me is Dr. Roy Shestowitz from the TechBytes website.
It's Friday night and I'm gonna get sauce. I fought the troll and the troll lost. I fought the troll and the troll lost. He tried to boss me and was outbossed. I fought the troll and the troll lost. I fought the troll and the troll lost. Underneath his creeper bridge, hoping goats will cross. Quoting Ashcroft and Tom Ridge.
So welcome to episode 10 of the TechBytes audiocast. I'm Tim, and with me is also Roy and Gordon. We're from the OpenBytes, TechBytes and thistleweb.co.uk websites respectively. Today's audiocast is going to be covering Microsoft FUD, and we're going to be looking at some of the recent articles in relation to what Microsoft's been saying about Linux and free and open source software. And with that, we'll crack straight on with Roy, who's going to introduce the first article that we're going to discuss.
Well, I think the original story, the first one I'm going to talk about, comes from the Russian press, as far as I know. And Glenn Moody, he's the person who provided the translation and got a whole discussion rolling about 2 days ago. As you said before, it's about Microsoft claiming that Linux is at the end of the life cycle, or at least the translation says it's the end of life. I think it's life cycle, it says. Which is quite funny, because lots of people would then say, well, what about Windows or the desktop, or even Microsoft Business is not doing exceptionally well, despite what they used to claim. I hope actually on this show we will go a bit into the past and try to give people a taste of what Microsoft has been doing over the years. I think this is a pretty minor story, this latest example, but it just shows you that they carry on with the same tactics.
Well, if we take that as a starting point, I think for a few points that I certainly want to make, and I think Gordon will want to make some as well. I read the article myself, and it's one of the things that we've come to expect from Microsoft and any company that has an interest in the failure of free and open source software and Linux. And it shows a level of arrogance, in my opinion, on one side, because Microsoft believes it can get away with saying these comments, but it also shows a level of ignorance on the side of the end user, because people do believe this type of statement and will take it on face value.
Well, because they print this stuff out, and it isn't first example they give some validation by printing this type of thing without a challenge. If you were to doubt these claims, you would approach the other side for a rebuttal of some sort, and I think that's missing. So
it's I mean, for any Linux user over a couple of years, I think it's pretty typical of the comments we see. I mean, it's not the most popular one, and I think the most popular one that you see in respect of Linux and people trying to create doubt around it is, if you use Linux, you always have to use the command line, which is absolute rubbish. I don't know, Gordon, have you got any experiences on this, or any observations you want to make?
Well, on this specific one, first of all, it's interesting that Microsoft have chosen to mark something as the end of life that they don't own. You know, that's interesting. They keep claiming that there's 250 odd patents that they'll never name. They refuse to name. They've been called on these patents. What are they? But they refuse to name them because the extortion racket only works while the invisible axe is above the guillotine ready to drop. As soon as you show what the axe is, you see at every chance there is no axe there. And that racket dries up. So it's interesting. Maybe they do believe they own Linux, and they've got a right to say it's an end of life. See, the way I look at it is, free software only ends its life cycle when people stop using it and when people stop developing for it, stop improving it, stop fixing bugs. So any project that has users, even if it's one person left who uses it, it's not end of life. It cannot be end of life. When that happens, and Linux has already got a huge following right around the world of people who will keep it alive. and all the major projects from KDE to GNOME to well, you name it, they've all got plenty of people who are willing to do that. So it'll never be end of life by that sort of standard.
And I think also when you look at how many Linux-based devices are not only just about to come onto the market, but are already existing and thriving. I mean, you have to look no further than Android itself. And to make a sweeping statement like Linux is at the end of its life cycle, I think the proper statement, and I've thought this for quite a while, is desktop. The relevance of the desktop is at the end of its life cycle. I think we're now in a position where many people use online applications and online services, and the desktop that you choose to use or the operating system you choose to use is really rather irrelevant. I can talk to a Windows user online in exactly the same way as I could talk to a Linux user. And I think now as you see gaming moving to the console market and sitting in the front room on the TV screen, the relevance of the desktop and what you're actually using is shifting away. And there'll be a plethora of options out there for people, and we can all still communicate and all still collaborate with each other regardless of what we're using. That was sort of my take on the subject. So, Roy, I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Roy?
Yeah, looking a few years back, I can think of one article from the press in Thailand, I think 2008, when a person called Bill Hill, who's coming from, I think from IBM to Microsoft to be the so-called open source guy at Microsoft, but also being very hostile and abrasive when it comes to, obviously, with the Linux side of open source. And one of the remarks is quoted as saying in the press in the I think it's the Bangkok Times, was that Linux was dead at the time, 2008 or so. And he also cursed the free software movement. Maybe he said it was dead or something of that sort. Now, the interesting thing at the time, the article vanished after a few days. I assumed Microsoft wasn't too happy with it. It was claimed to be direct quotes from the what he was at the time. I think was like vice president of some sort. But he, a few months later, he actually quit his position. He didn't leave Microsoft, unlike some people like Sam Ramji or there was before, what's his name, Taylor. Martin Taylor used to work with Ballmer as the main anti-Linux guy. And they don't call it anti-Linux, but it's very obvious these people are assigned to the project of getting people to stop migrating to Linux and to start to move to Windows, especially when they live Unix. Now, what he did, he moved to the Windows group, the Windows servers group, and only a few days ago we started to throw some FUD at Linux once again. So it shows you this is their strategy in some way. And these are the people who try to convince you Linux is dead and you want to move to Windows. And the way they do that is to convince you there is no future in Linux, there is no growth. They try and do this on a desktop, 1% market share is the talking point, or in the case of servers, they talk about revenue as the yardstick to go by, and they have those firms that give them the type of numbers that are laid out the way that's convenient to them. I was hoping we'd go through patterns of FUD which are around this issue of size or growth. We have these things to do with patents. We have things to do with ease of use or stability or maturity, stereotypes like kids in basement and people with beards, which are supposedly, if you have a beard, Microsoft wants people to think that you're some kind of I don't know. I don't want to say anything about people with beards, but they try to create those stereotypes that will deter corporate customers from moving into this thing called Linux.
So before we go into any specifics, I was going to say, first of all, Santa's got a beard.
Yes. I was thinking
yeah,
maybe he's a Linux user then.
They use this, not the company directly, but the trolls or people who are associated with the company do use stereotypes, and I think it's very mature, and you would never see it coming from even a person like Ballmer. these words, but you do have marking people using a caricature of the opposition. We probably do this as well. We're probably guilty of trying to portray Microsoft as these, control freaks and people